Hi, everybody. My name is Nancy Blankenship. I'm the Education Coordinator for North Country Healthcare. We are here for a North Country Healthcare Community Education presentation. We have Daryl Bodner with us today. I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping things. Everyone, if you could mute yourselves, I have taken care of that actually. The presentation is going to be recorded. If you would like to see it in the future, it will be posted on the NCH YouTube channel. We will be having a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. You can ask questions either using the chat feature to chat all, or you can raise your hand on your monitor and we will unmute you and you can ask your questions. Daryl Bodner is here to present on cybersecurity today. He's the Chief Information Officer for North Country Healthcare. He holds professional memberships in SANS Institute, CompTIA, as well as the Cyber Threat Alliance. He's been with our system as North Country Healthcare's CIO for 4 years, but he's been within our system for 34 years total. He's managing the information technology department. He and his team of experts safeguard patient and employee information within our affiliate facilities, Weeks Medical Center, Androscoggin Valley Hospital, and Upper Connecticut Valley Hospital, as well as North Country Home Health and Hospice. That also includes the business and finance offices of North Country Healthcare. This evening, he is a community member. Many of you, he recognized several names here. So he is a community member and he's a local business owner of the Copper Pig in Lancaster. This evening, he's offering a review of the current cybersecurity landscape, focusing on real world consumer threats and trends. Daryl, I'll hand it over to you.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's actually really unique. It's kind of fun to be able to share some of the things I've learned. I will tell you up front that what I'm going to do is this is informal. If you have questions, by all means, if there's something you want to ask during the presentation, just put your hand up and I'll try to look at it. I'm trying to look at 2 screens here so that I can keep an eye on both things. I'm so glad that North Country Healthcare is investing the time and the effort and to be able to do this, because I think this is really, really part of the community as a whole. I think it's absolutely necessary to look at this, and we manage a lot of resources. I think we're at 23 locations now across all of Coos County, and let's just say it's very busy. But what I'll do is I'm going to go through this, keep things at a very high level. You'll see some terminology. I'm going to break that down because this is the terminology you would probably see in a real world event. I want to break that information down so it's something that you can understand. And if at any time, and I have a tendency to do this, any of you who know me, I might start to talk up to a higher level in terms of security, please bring me back down so that I can convey this so you understand it. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is cybersecurity statistics. So 1 in 2 of you, so that would probably put 6 of you right now will probably have some sort of breach at some point in time. And I'm going to actually share with you later on how you can identify if there's been a breach and how you can help mitigate that. And there's ways that you can tell whether or not you know it or not. The next bullet is sort of interesting because the average time to identify a breach is 212 days. That means that people are sitting there looking at your information, watching things, seeing things going on for a long period of time. Not a very comfortable place to be. The cybersecurity criminals that are out there, they can obtain the tools to do this for $1. There's actually places, they call it the dark web. It's called Onion. It's called a lot of things, the Tor network. This is sort of a sub-level of what you would see in the normal internet. There's tools out there. You can rent them. You can buy them as a service, just as you were going to do and say, I want to pay $1. I want to do this. And they'll give you the tools that you need to do this. And it just shows you the level at which people are willing to do to make a profit. Not only are people using the tools to make a profit, but in acting on those, the people who are presenting these are doing it as well. During the pandemic, 600% was the cyber crime increase because people took advantage of this. They took great advantage of it. The likelihood of somebody being prosecuted for stealing your stuff is 0.05. So if you think that there's an internet police that are out there that are going to put people in jail for doing this, it's not going to happen. There's just so many things going on. You're very, very unlikely to be able to reclaim anything that you may have lost. And I'm going to go through some real world examples to show you what you can do to help prevent this. Malicious attackers will use a Microsoft Office type file or another. You'll see things come through your email as an attachment saying it's a Microsoft Word document. It's an Excel document. It could be anything. That is how people tend to breach that group and take advantage of it. Every 14 seconds, there's a ransomware attack, and every 39 seconds, there's a cyber attack in some way, shape, or form. The global cost is expected to reach $10.5 trillion annually. That's just the cost that goes into preventing it, as well as the payouts to some of these organizations. But the interesting thing is, when it comes to a consumer level, 91% of attacks launch are with phishing by email. So you can eliminate 91% of your risk if you have really, really good practices when it comes to your email. And we'll get into some of those pieces. I'm going to stop now just to say, is there any questions that anybody has at this point in time based on some of those statistics? And I'm sorry if I'm looking this way, because I have my screen here and I have you on my right-hand panel, so I tend to look over that way. Gail, go ahead. I told you I was going to make this interactive. I'm not going to wait till the end, because these are when you have questions.
Full disclosure, I was recently hacked my bank account.
It happens.
Yes, it was 2 weeks ago, and I have spent hours. Citizens Bank has been wonderful, but somebody took money out. I think they got through the Zelle account. I don't know how they got in, but the number one thing to tell everybody is it takes hours and hours to change everything after this happens to you.
It is.
But one of my, and I don't mean it's about me, but when you say cyber attack, define, Daryl, what you're saying first. Is that a huge, generic word? What's your definition?
So in the context of the bullet that I have here, that is a targeted launched attack. So that's why you'll see ransomware attacks will happen more frequently. Cyber attacks are targeted attacks. A lot of the things that you'll see in the consumer world are launched because there's a piece of malware that's installed on your computer, and when it finally executes, then it reaches back out to the bad actors. So, but when I talk about cyber attacks, these are actually targeted events where people go off and execute on these. Ransomware, however, can be sitting on your computer for a period of time and will just go off based on a particular date. So you'll see those things happen more frequently than you will targeted cyber attacks.
Now, if in my case, and again, it's not all about me, they as Citizens Mandatory said I had to have both of my laptops scanned, okay, yep, professionally. I did. They found nothing.
Yep.
Okay. So what conclusion would I draw from that the attack was on the bank? And, in other words, it wasn't my computer.
Possibly not. If I had to guess, Gail, and it's hard for me to understand, if I had to make a guess, it was probably through an unknown social engineering attack against you.
Yeah.
So this would not have been a virus or anything. This would have been through an email phishing attack where at some point somebody would have in some way got you to compromise some piece of information that they used to do that, whether it was an account, whether it was a password. Now, the other thing that can happen in a lot of cases, and I'm going to get to this, is that people will use, and I can't emphasize this enough, the same password for different areas. That's common. A lot of people do it. I use multiple passwords, not necessarily the same, but I restrict what I use. I have a specific password that I will use for my banking accounts. I do not use that password for anything else. Now, if I'm looking at a Facebook account and a LinkedIn account, I might use the same password. I might do something similar. The key to that, and I'll get into some of this, is making them complex. And I can tell you, I know everybody hates the fact of a complex password, but I can make it so you can understand a complex password very, very easily and remember it very easily, and make it so that users wouldn't have to, they wouldn't be easily guessable or hacked.
Do you recommend, and I again don't want to take you off your message, Do you recommend those password programs that you have one password and then it populates all your passwords?
I do. As long as you're using a reputable one, I do, because the problem with managing passwords is they're complex, they're hard to understand. Password tools can be very, very beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And by all means, we'll go through this. And if there's more questions that come up, just let me know. Okay, so here we go. What a perfect way to intro, Gail. You teed me right up. Types of attacks: compromised, weak, or stolen credentials. And that means your usernames and passwords. I'll tell you, there are ways that you can do this, and people will try anything to do this, and they use very sophisticated ways to try to get your email. You shouldn't say your email. A lot of times it's your username and your password. Many times people use their username for this. I'll take a second to talk about complex passwords. And you can create complex passwords that are unguessable by doing very, very simple algorithms, and these would be only known to you. So in a case like this, let's say you're looking at I don't know, I'll pick something that I love my dog. Okay, so I can remember that phrase, I love my dog. Easy to type in, easy to do. I can replace the first letter I can capitalize the first letter in every single one of those words. So I would be capitalized, the M in my would be capitalized, love my dog. So you have this, now you have this long password, which I'm trying to. So you've got 10 characters in that particular case, but you could make it longer. You could make it, my dog's name is Mojo. I love my dog Mojo. That's an easy one. You could use any sort of phrase you want. The key is to try to make it complex by adding in shifted characters. Those can be capitalized words. So if you capitalize every word in your phrase, that would work out very well. The other thing you can do is you can replace characters within the phrase to do things that would make sense to you. So say you have an I in the word, make it a exclamation point. Or if you have a in there, use an @ sign. So when you think of something like I love my dog Mojo, and I replace every O with a 0, I have made a very, very complex password that's very, very easy for me to remember within that. And the chances of somebody compromising that would be very, very limited. So if you have a passphrase that you can create, I would strongly suggest that you do something along those lines and make it complex. I also am not a fan of frequently changing passwords. And a lot of people would say, but NIST, which is a national organization, say that on cybersecurity, will tell you that most of the compromises that occurred are by people changing their passwords or being prompted to change their passwords, and they don't know whether that password prompt is legitimate or not. So I'm not a big fan of changing them frequently. I am a big fan of complex passwords. So if you want to talk about those after, we can go into them. I can give you some other examples. Encryption sounds complex, but a lot of computers will be encrypted in case that happens. Hopefully your phone has a passcode on it. You'll have a passphrase or something. Guess what? When it's not open and it's locked, it's whether you're using face recognition or not, it is encrypted. Always encourage people to do that. Misconfiguration of systems. I put this bullet on there because I want people to understand that when I say misconfiguration of systems, this means that you should use proper techniques with your computer. Receive updates. Make sure your computer is configured to get updates and take those updates when they're applied. Just set it to automatic and let it go. Those are patches to vulnerabilities on your computer that you should do. That's the reason for doing it. It's not, it could be there to make it run better, but it's also there to block compromised issues. Software, Trojans, ransomware, antivirus, anti-malware is key. There's a lot of great ones out there. Microsoft has Defender now, Windows Defender, great one, free of charge. You don't have to pay for it. It sits on there and it works very, very well. It comes as part of your Windows system. Phishing attempts. This is the biggest one that you'll see anywhere within cybersecurity. People trying to compromise this. They target these. I can give you, I was going to say dozens, but hundreds of examples that I have been involved with where people have done things. I have seen very, very intelligent people, based upon the nature of a social engineering and phishing attack, go and buy, I'm not lying to you, $500 gift cards and bring them to somebody because it seemed legitimate. It seemed so legitimate. The conversation that ensued via email seemed legitimate. I promise you, these are very intelligent people. I asked an individual if I could give this as an example, but one of the attacks that happened on a very good friend of mine, his wife is a pediatrician. Pediatricians are involved in legal cases many times, and they have to go and give presentations, whether it's child abuse or neglect or something. This individual received a phone call from who was supposedly a sheriff saying that they did not appear in court and needed to appear in court immediately because they were supposed to be there. She said, it wasn't on my schedule. Nobody contacted me. He said, yes, they did. You were supposed to do this. Just please stay with me on the phone. And as soon as you can, you have to get to this place. So as they went through, they said, by the way, you need to pay a fine when you're here. They will accept a gift card. She was going through this process, was in her, this is a pediatrician. This is a very smart individual who's aware of this. Bought the cards and was driving and texted her husband because she couldn't get off the phone with this individual. And he said, stop what you're doing. None of this is legitimate. And she was so involved with where she was and how they did it with this sense of urgency that she just finally hung up the phone, which the sheriff, this individual on the phone, told her not to do. Very, very targeted. I can tell you that this individual is somebody that he works within North Country Healthcare. His wife is the pediatrician. And he said, I could share this because this is a real world event that could happen. Now, very smart people can be very, very easily compromised if the person doing the social engineering knows how to leverage this. So I just want to keep it in mind that if something happens, you should not feel stupid or embarrassed. These are the things that happen to real people. Unpatched vulnerabilities, that comes with your system. If your system tells you it's got patches to apply, put those in and reboot it when you do. I know it's a pain, but please do it. That's what will help protect your system. Brute force attacks are not as common anymore. This is where people try to use they use tools to do attacks and keep keying in a password to a site. Most of these now have been mitigated by limitations on how many times you can log in. Web application and attacks. I'm going to give you an example of one of those in a minute, but this is where something happens when you're on a website. There's a few screens that flash and all of a sudden you have a message on your screen that says you need to do something. And I'll show you some examples of those. And I've had people that I've had to help do this. I've seen people that have done some of these pieces. And then the other one is man-in-the-middle attacks. These are also becoming less and less common, but this is where somebody impersonates somebody in between. These are people that used to go around and use in between wireless systems. So you're in a parking lot and they could mimic what a wireless access point would be, and they would have people connect to them and they could get their information. Doesn't happen as much anymore because you have to physically be there. There are much, much easier ways to do things remotely. So a lot I just handed out there. I'm trying to break these down because you're going to see some of these presented to you if you ever hear of cybersecurity risks. I want you to understand what they are. Does that help? Does that work? Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I will move on. Okay, this is a lot of information, but I'm going to go through this step by step, and I will share this slide deck with anybody who wants it. So social engineering and biases, what do they do? So they have and pay attention to these, whether it's in an email or whether it's on a phone call or whether it's even in a text now. Loss aversion. The person is going to tell you that if you don't act quickly on something, you are going to lose something. You are going to have your bank account. You are going to have loss of access to something. You are going to be able to do something. Most of your banks are not going to call up and say, I'm going to cancel your account if you don't respond within the next 10 minutes. That will not happen. So do not fall prey to those sort of attacks. Authority bias. This is another bias. This is where people trust people who are coming from different positions. I just told you about a sheriff. It's a sheriff. He's talking to have me meet him at a courthouse. By the way, you know he never would have met her at a courthouse. It would have been somewhere else that would have happened. Who knows what could have happened to her physically if she would have gone. But in this particular case, they're going to use some sort of authority. This is a police officer. This is somebody else. They're going to try to use these. Urgency. You need to do this immediately. You do not have time to think. As I mentioned in the other example, you can't even get off the phone with me. You're going to do this. They're going to use a sense of urgency. They're going to make you feel like a victim within this piece. Once again, has anybody ever had their bank, their credit card company call up and say, you need to do this. You need to give me your username and password now. You need to end. It doesn't happen. So please don't fall prey to those as well. The halo effect. These are reputable brands. Microsoft is asking you to change your username and password. Capital One is sending you this piece. They're going to use people that seem reputable, but pay attention to the message. Take the moment. You have plenty of time to think about something. You'll get a message on your phone sometimes saying, did you agree? Is this purchase something you did? Well, if it's on your phone and it's coming through and they're asking you, did you approve a purchase? Yes, I did. That's a simple question that would be asked. We need you to change your username and password now because we feel like it's been hacked. That's not going to happen. They are not going to do that. So do not fall prey to that. Present bias. You have won something. No, you didn't. It's just not going to happen. So when you get an email that says that you've won something, you haven't. Just ignore those pieces. Just let those go. Probably most of them. And then this other one was added in, and it was something that somebody had said to me once. It's the unique vulnerability. Invulnerability. You have an illusion. This cannot possibly happen to Gail Fisher. There is no way that Gail is going to ever have her bank account compromised. It just won't happen to me. It happens to somebody else. No, it can happen. And that's a reality to doing these things. So if you see something that sounds like it's wrong, it probably is. And you'll see some of those as we continue to go forward. I wanted to sort of break those down to give you an idea of what they are. And like I said, I'll share these, and it's a little bit complex, but does that make sense to people as well, that these are the biases they're going to use? My biggest words of encouragement are take the moment to pause. If there's somebody on the phone and they sound aggressive, hang up. Just hang up. If it was a police officer, they will call you back. If it was somebody, they will call you back. They will do something. A hacker will not. Okay, so this is an email. I took some of these, and these were just some examples I found online. So Amazon.com, right? Here's your greeting. We have sent you an email because we have strong reason to believe that your account has been compromised. Okay, so what is wrong with this? So most times you'll see personalized greetings. You'll see throughout this email that there is misspellings. You'll also see that they've put that sense of urgency that I mentioned to you before in the message. Okay, so but there's other subtle pieces to this. If you look at the account where it came from, this came from Amazon, it says, right? But it says management at, look at that closely, mazocanada.ca. It's not Amazon. They have a different URL. They have a different domain that's associated with it. It is not an email address from Amazon. You'll see how that looks slightly different. So when you get one of these, take the moments to read it. Do not fall victim to it. Look at what they say. Look for misspellings within it. The other thing you can see, and I really can't show you with this, but I will after, is if you hover over any of these things they tell you to click, it'll bring up a little brief window that'll show you the URL. Well, what does that look like? You'll see that it's not the same. In this one, it says redirect Kears, SKEDJ.com. When you hover over something, it'll show you what the true link is going to. Now, they are getting much, much better at these because you can do spoofing on these, but take the time to read through it. Do not just fall victim to say, I need to do this quickly. Just take some time and spend with it. That's just one example. This is another example. I used AT&T, that your email account was compromised. You have to upgrade now. You can look at all of these, the ATT services this, ATT mail. A lot of these seem legitimate, but when you look at the from, that is not a legitimate address. But the complexities that some people might experience would suggest, well, it's got to be legitimate. I have to work through this. Don't. Take the time to look at it. If there's ever a time that you feel that you have something that they've actually queued on, your Amazon account, your Verizon account, take a moment and use your phone and call the individuals who are doing this. You have support numbers all over the place. You can ask them to say, did you send me this? Do I have to upgrade this now? 90% of the time, they're going to tell you, no, it's fraudulent. And you can see the elements within an email that would suggest that. So if any of you received these types of emails, have you seen these where there's misspellings? I'm going to keep polling the audience here. I'll just ask them. So okay, so you have. You know what to do with them. You know just to get rid of them. Don't respond to them. Don't keep them. Just delete them and get rid of them. That's what I would do in every single case. All right, next. These are this one's a little bit different, and I'll show you the next slide is a little bit better. This is what they call a hijacking of your browser. It'll tell you that it's detected a virus. please do not shut down your computer. If you do, you'll compromise these pieces. And the next slide will be a little bit better. In 1 week, I had at one point, there was 8 people that had actually called the number that was on here. Hey, it's an 877 number. And they talked to an individual who they granted access to their computer, who actually got into it and did this. Now, because it seems so legitimate to them. Now, honestly, this is where it gets a little bit scarier. The company is legitimate. There are support people, but this is a tool that they use to get you to pay them to help fix your computer, when in all reality, all they did was clear your browser cache and get rid of this screen. They sometimes use it to sell you fake antivirus software, or they'll use it to charge you real antivirus software, but charge you X amount of dollars. The one I knew who happened to last time, has since passed away, paid $200 for an antivirus software that cost $39. But it was a legitimate company. You can actually reach out to them and they'll say, hey, we provide a service. Your antivirus software is not going to flash up within, as you can see here, within a window browser, in your browser window. It will not do that. It is going to have a little piece in the corner, which you can see here, but it's hard for me to explain this, but this is all within the browser, your internet browser window. If you minimize this, it all goes away. None of this is actually happening. This is another tool that people use to compromise it. This is where they've hijacked a browser. Has any of you ever experienced this one? Maybe not. If you do, it's out there. It'll happen to you at some point in time. Just take a moment to realize what your environment is. Do not fall. And by all means, if they tell you not to reboot the machine because you're going to do things, reboot it, because more than likely your problem is going to go away, and they know that. Okay. The obvious one. This is one that, yes, how satisfied are you? And if you go, this will enter you into win a free iPhone. No, they won't. When you click on some of these items down here, they are going to prompt you with another question. They're going to prompt you with, okay, so share your email address with us so we know where to send the free iPhone. Key in your credentials. These are the types of things that they're going to use to be able to compromise. I do not want to see any of you fall into that realm, but these are the types of tools they'll use. When it comes down to it, I think it's to use common sense. When you're looking at these, say, listen, I did not win something. No, the sheriff is not going to come arrest me. There's a lot of pieces involved with this. Just take a moment to take a deep breath and realize where you are. Okay. Going further, a lot of information on this thing, but I'm going to talk to you about how you can help prevent yourself. And some of these I've already touched on, but we'll go through. So education and prevention is key. So things like this, if you get the opportunity to listen to somebody, probably even better than me at speaking, watch the videos, see what's out there, look at things. Never open unexpected or untrusted attachments. If they come from somebody you didn't know and they say it's important, it probably isn't. Avoid revealing personal information and sensitive data. These people will try to compromise it. They'll try to get it from you. They'll do it over the phone even many times. There's things that are called targeting spear phishing, which means that they're targeting something. Some of them are just blankets that are out there. We also have things called whaling in my world. This is where they go after. So phishing, spear phishing means they're trying to target somebody. Whaling means they're going after people like CEOs of hospitals. And we see these attacks happen frequently. If you find a USB drive somewhere out in a parking lot, don't take it home and plug it in. Not a good thing to do. Just throw it away. Somebody lost it. It's gone. That's it. End of day. I'm sorry. Just don't use them. People shouldn't be using those. There are VPNs that people use mostly when it's related to work, but you can buy these as consumer grade VPNs. These are things that can help encrypt you no matter where you go. I think it's a little bit overkill for some of the things. You'll see advertisements for those, NordVPN, and there's a few others that are out there. Unless you're doing a lot of banking or commercial work, I would suggest you don't really need to go that far, but they are available. Patch your systems. Up-to-date systems are one of the things where vulnerabilities are. If your computer is telling you that patches have been applied, please restart. Do so. You don't have to do it immediately, but do it at your nearest convenience to make sure you stay up to date. Antivirus, anti-malware. By all means, you should have them. I hope everybody has these installed on your computers and you keep those up to date as well. Secure passwords. We talked about these before, and I'd like to spend a little bit more time about them as I was describing earlier. If you're using these, you can use shifted characters, you can use special characters to replace things. I really am a big fan of using passphrases. You know, you can use your children's names, you can use your grandchildren's names, you can use anything that you're thinking about. But try to make them more complex, make them memorable, but make them more complex by putting in shifted characters or things. People will struggle with those. The more characters there are and the more complex they are, the safer you will be. The other thing I think that you should really try to leverage is multi-factor authentication. And these are items that your bank will do. This is where they'll send you a message on your phone when you try to log in to say, okay, yep, I am doing this. I'm currently doing this. Usually it's a text message that says key in a number, or it's a message that you just click on your phone to say yes. Any chance you have an opportunity to leverage those, by all means do so. Most of your commercial, like I said, banks and financial institutions now are making this normal. Through North Country Healthcare, if you connect remotely, you have to do this. If you're using your email outside of the facility, you have to do this. If you are like me that have elevated credentials, I have to do this when I access just about any system. This is one of the best ways to prevent something. You'll see it multi-factor authentication. You'll see it dual factor authentication. What that means is multi-factor authentication means you have to have two pieces of credentials. So what is that typically? Something you know, your username and password. Something you are, a thumbprint, a biometric scan, and sometimes with your iPhones or other phones, the facial scan. That is a something that you are. It's a biometric. And then the last one, so you have something that you know, something that you are, something that you have. And that would be your phone in your possession. So that's why when you see multi-factor and they send you a text, you have to have both the username, password, and your phone to be able to do this. There are ways around it, but that narrows the hole to 99.99% that nobody would do that. They cannot crack those pieces. So if you have those opportunities, by all means do it. If your email, Microsoft Office now offers these, many of your emails will offer the same thing. When you log into your email, it's a little bit of a pain. But if you're logging into your email, it'll say, would you like to enable multi-factor, dual factor authentication? You say yes. Every time you log in, you'll get a message on your phone. It's either click yes or you'll get a number. You key it in, that's it. Nobody can crack those pieces, and that's where you'd be safe. Gail, you asked about password management systems. You'll see I have some examples at the bottom of this: Dashlane, Keeper, NordPass, OnePass, LastPass. These are all vendors that are reputable that you can download. Many of them offer a free version. Some of them offer a version that is a minimal amount of money to pay. And you can get it on your computer, you can get it on your phone, and it will keep your passwords safe.
Daryl?
Yes.
Did you say earlier in the presentation, can you send us out this slide?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll look to Nancy. Nancy, I don't know if we can do this. If you watch, you can send. What I can do is I can put in if you want, I can put in the chat, or Nancy can put in the chat their email address. You can send us your contact information, and we'll send it to you.
All right,
Absolutely.
That would be great, Daryl. Thank you.
Nancy, are you okay with that?
I am. I'll actually do that right now, so everyone will have plenty of time to write it down.
Sure. And then you can use this, and I'll send this out. And I kind of assume people would. Rose, did you just put your hand up? You're on mute. I can't hear you, Rose. You're on mute if you're talking.
There, can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
Okay, what antivirusware is there for Safari, Apple Safari?
So are you talking using a Mac, or are you talking using it on your iPhone?
MacBook Air.
I'm going to be challenged to say that I think at this point in time, I believe that McAfee offers one. Well, you know what I'll do? Wait a minute. I'm not a Mac user. I have an iPhone. Oh, let me slide that out of the way. But I don't have one, so I haven't really used one. Well, let me take a quick look here for you.
Okay.
So McAfee does have one. Norton does have one. And Bitdefender, which is actually a really good one that's used by Microsoft, actually has one as well. So I would suggest any of those.
What Defender was that?
Bit Defender,
Bit.
BIT Defender.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Now I'm gonna have a little bit more fun here, so we'll move along. But I was gonna use some challenges. So, what are things that you can do for education and prevention as we go through this? So, I talked about your mobile devices having a biometric. So, if you can use your face as opposed to a key, that's a wonderful thing because it's very, very hard to reproduce somebody's face. My phone is set up to just have face recognition, logs me in. I would strongly suggest if you have that opportunity to do so. There's some that will have thumbprint readers, they'll have those pieces. For those of you, I'm going to go a little bit outside of the computer world here for some of these to look at this, but credit reports. A lot of times people will leverage and access your credit report to be able to gain the ability to create accounts and to do certain things with accounts. They can open up accounts and you don't know about it. Unless you're making purchases, did you know you can freeze your accounts at any given time so that nobody can go ahead and access those? Then when you're going to make a large purchase and you want to open it up, you can then unfreeze it, let the credit ratings go, and then refreeze your account again. This doesn't mean that your account doesn't update on your credit report, but it just means that it will not be changed based upon, people will not be able to access that account going forward. I really would suggest that if you're not applying for loans, and you have the opportunity that you freeze your credit. Like it's a perfectly acceptable thing to do, particularly if you're not making large purchases. Call blocking. If you get a call from somebody that you don't recognize, they don't leave a voicemail, just block that call because they'll try to repetitively do it again. Granted, nowadays they mix up numbers all the time. They're constantly regenerating new ones and it's very, very difficult. But if you have the opportunity to block a frequent one, by all means do. And Gail, this is one I was concerned about with your comment before. I use credit cards to make most of my purchases. I rarely, in fact, I would say I never use my debit card to make purchases for things. The reason is your debit card is directly attached to your cash, and your credit cards always have an element where they can put in a. You're forgiven for most of those pieces on a credit card if you're going through for fraudulent purchases. There's protections.
Can I just
Sure, absolutely.
You're absolutely right, 1,000%. I use the debit card for everything.
Yep.
Prior to December 29th. And in dealing with this whole mess, that's exactly what Citizens Bank said to me. I've switched over to using my credit card for everything.
And you should.
And I've told my family that. I mean, these are things people don't know. And the other, this is excellent, Daryl, too, what you're doing. The other question I've got for you in communication, sorry about my barking dog.
You're fine.
Is when I got the first call from Citizens Bank Fraud Department that there had been a problem, I've talked to enough people that I was skeptical that I was talking to the crooks. So I was very nervous about that. Now, I said to that person, how do I know you're actually on the up and up with Citizens Bank? His answer was, call the number on the back of the card.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to tell you. I would hang up with them, take my card, flip it over, and I would call back.
Yeah. And then, and I did end up that afternoon going to Citizens. And I was so afraid that I had been duped. You know, you always feel like, how could this, like you talked about the pediatrician, how could this happen to me, right? And I said, did I talk to the crook? He goes, no, you didn't. That was a fraud person. But those are fears that we have, even though we're fairly bright people. We can be snookered on this whole thing.
Absolutely, you can. And like I said, when I started off at the beginning, this is not a question of intelligence or competencies or anything. These are things that people will use. Very, very well educated people will fall prey to this. Exactly what they told you to do is exactly what I would recommend doing. If somebody calls you and say, we've got a fraudulent purchase, we need to discuss this. And you'll say, who are you calling from? and they'll say, well, I'm calling from Citizens Bank. You have a card. Okay, I'm going to hang up with you now, and I'm going to call that fraud line number. They are in the business. They'll say this. They'll say, that's a great idea. Please do so. And then they'll move on. I mean, that's exactly what you should do. The other thing you can do, because we all have debit cards for reasons, I think that you could set up 2 accounts and have your debit card attached to the account that has the minimal amount of money. So say you need $500 in your debit account. Have it overflow, put it into that piece, and just put that amount of money if you're going to use your debit card for local purchases, and keep those accounts separate. Because we all need cash now and then, although it's getting closer and closer to being a cashless world. But if you need cash, go ahead and use your debit card, but put a limit on that you're only susceptible to so amount of money. Keep your other money in a different account, your checking account or your savings account or whatever it might be, and just have it flow over. But for most purchases, definitely for all online purchases, by all means, and for most other things, if you're running through Shaw's or a grocery store and you need to use it for something and that's what you prefer, fine, but make sure you keep a minimal amount of money for that particular account. Okay. Alerts, you'll see online, you'll see in the news, and this is going to get interesting. I hope it'll be interesting for you in a minute, to talk about reputable companies saying that they have been hacked or they have been, compromises have occurred. So if you see those, pay attention. If you see, Citizens Bank says that we've had a compromise, you should definitely check your accounts, change your passwords, do something. You should. These would not come to you probably through an email. They could. They would probably come from online resources, news outlets, those types of things. They will not ask you for a username and password. They will not provide you a link. You'll go and take care of those yourself. So one thing I want to get into, and there's this last one where it says, have I been pawned? If any of you heard of have I been pawned before? Okay, I'm going to show you something in a minute, and I'll use myself as a guinea pig, and then I'll use some of you as we go through this, if you're willing to do so. Told you this was going to be interactive. So there's a link here that says to this thing, have I been pawned? What this is a collaborative effort by some security individuals that have taken all of the breaches that have occurred throughout, up till recently, that have occurred back to almost, I think, 15 or 20 years. These are things that have been posted to some of these areas I've talked about. These are large breaches. These breaches consist of usernames and passwords and other types of things. And this is to a benefit. And like I said, I can see you guys looking at this, and I can send this link out before, but have I been PWNED? So let me go ahead and I'm going to bring this up, and I want to make sure this goes through. So can you all see this screen? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my home email address. All right. This is my home email address, and I'm going to click, have I been pawned? Now across the top, you'll see that there's some different pieces here where you can actually search for passwords as well. So this is my email address, which is used for many accounts. I click on it. Uh-oh, my account has been breached. And this is a real thing. I'm not making this up. So when were these breaches occurred? Well, in 2013, Adobe had a breach that I was a part of. I take a lot of photos. Their online one. 153 million Adobe accounts were breached during this ID. There was an anti-public combo list. This was one that was posted online in this dark web piece that I told you about that they had there. City O'Dea, no idea what this company is, but it was used by an organization where they dehash these passwords and email addresses. So it was included there. Wasn't part of it, didn't know anything about it, but that's where it was. And then these collections, you'll see this collection number 1. This one contained 2.7 billion records, including 773 million unique email addresses that were done. These were all legitimate. These were all compromises that occurred over time. LinkedIn, I'm a business person, so I have LinkedIn accounts. LinkedIn was hacked twice where they compromised usernames and passwords. And believe it or not, Mathway, which was one that I used back in the day of prior to, was hacked in January of 2020. I used it when I helped my son to be able to do math stuff, but it goes back to a different sort of process. So now I'm going to key in my business email, DBOD North Country Healthcare. Yay, none of this was compromised, because I don't use that for a lot of accounts. They're privileged. So a lot of these will show you that you can do this. Now you can go to over to here and you can say, okay, so have I been pawned? You can see about passwords. Okay, so let's look at capital PASSWORD 123. Uh-oh, that password has been compromised 46,167 times. The reason why this is really, really important for people to understand is you can determine whether or not your password that you use that's to you has been used in a fraudulent attack at some point. What does this all mean? Well, the thing is if you key in an email address here and you see something that is important or is relevant, you'll see those accounts and you may want to go in and change those accounts. Doesn't mean anything has happened. It may actually be completely irrelevant. You know, if this was your I love my dog.com and you signed up and put your email address, you probably don't care whether it was compromised. But this is just to show you what happens. And this is done by a lot of individuals who have put a lot of effort forth to try to, you know, protect the consumer from things. So Gail, can I pick on you? Since you've been so vocal.
Should I have not been so vocal?
Oh,
Tim?
no, I love it. I love it. Would you mind if I used your email address and looked this up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So
It's Fisher, Fisher, Gail, GAIL 93 at gmail.com.
That look right?
Yeah, it looks fine.
All right. Moment of truth. Drum roll. Your username was not compromised in any of these.
So, not that it's done, but what is that? Does that give me any clue to how this all happened to me?
No, what happened with yours is probably they had your account information, which is not necessarily, this is more for online accounts that you would see that you used your email in that account somewhere, either as the username or when you signed up for something. These are usually related to reputable companies that have been hacked or compromised, and this is the information that they stole from there.
Okay, so it points more, not that it matters, it's
Nope,
done.
it just
But
says,
it points more that someone got my online banking username and password.
that's my guess, which
Yeah.
probably wasn't your email address because they wouldn't permit that in many
Yeah,
cases.
and that's what Citizens thinks too.
Yep, it falls into a line. By the way, Gail and I have never talked about this. This has all just worked out really, really well for tonight to be able to use it as an example. So
I wish I thought that it worked out really well for me, Daryl.
Well, you know, here's what I would say, Gail. It's going to happen to every one of us. It's happened to me. It's happened to all of us.
Yeah.
My hope is that your impact wasn't significant. It's probably a pain in the butt, but it hopefully wasn't significant. And based upon that, you'll be in a much better frame of mind and posture as the future comes forward. So that's one of the pieces. But I think my goal of this evening was to make you, first of all feel that no, first of all, it will probably happen to you. And if it does happen to you, there's nothing wrong with that. You're a victim like everybody else that happens out there. And I hope I provide the tools that will help you to prevent it from happening. But if it does happen, the things you should do if that happens. And there's some things, as we saw in the slide deck previously, that I think will be helpful to you from looking at this, like some of the pieces about your credit report. I honestly think if you guys aren't making large purchases, freeze your credit report. That's another way people can get it. You don't use a debit card, use a credit card. Don't use your debit cards for some of these pieces. These are things that you can do to minimize the impact to you. Antivirus, anti-malware. These are all normal things. I'm not sure how prevalent they are within your world. If you get a chance to do something, these are all small measures that you can do to help put yourself in a better position. But the biggest thing I think you can do is to take 2 minutes when you see something that seems odd and study it. Don't feel the need to rush, no matter how much somebody is trying to rush you to do something. Gail, my guess is that when you heard from citizens, they weren't saying, Gail, you've got 10 minutes to do this, or you're not going to do this. When you told them that you're going to call back and call the 1-800 number on the card, or they told you to do so, that is a process at which they're going to give you that comfort level and validation. Make sure what you're doing is what you should be doing, and think about the situation, because they can really put you in a compromising position by taking advantage of the nature of individuals. These are very smart people who are doing this, and they know how to do a lot of things to manipulate you.
And if I could be presumptuous enough to say, the other thing is I'm anal about going in online and checking my accounts every day.
Good.
Don't think I have tons of money. My point is, if you have $5, check your accounts every day, right?
Well,
And
yeah,
I found, citizens said to me, I found it so quickly. You know, the guy took $2,500 out of my account. Citizens made it good. But my point is, the one lesson I learned, or that I should tell everybody, is go in and be very observant about what's going on with your checking account or your savings account or whatever. Because if you just figure every 30 days I'll check it, it's not a good thing.
So, I mean, I said a lot, I presented a lot. I hope I brought it down to a level that made sense to people, because there's a lot of terms in there that you may see that you may not understand, and hopefully I did. Does anybody have any questions that for me, or anything that they want to share or discuss? I'm open to anything.
That sense of sacredness that it used to. We see how.
Hi, everybody. First of all, Daryl, this was great. My name is Tammy Vasha. I'm the IT manager for White Mountains.
Okay.
I'm also, excuse me, frog in my throat. I've been sitting here not talking. I'm also a credentialed cybersecurity analyst. So I was interested to see, when I saw this in the paper, what you're going to present. I think you brought it down. Things that he touched on as far as the passwords, very important. Once we set our policy at the college for once a year, so it doesn't need to be every quarter.
Yep.
But making sure they're over 12, because that is the number that hackers haven't gotten to yet, to put it in that thing. So we went to 14 characters just to bump it out. Using the multi-factor authentication, it is a pain, but it is going to protect you like you wouldn't believe. And some of your information, like Gail, you were wondering how. There's been breaches recently that are just going to start coming to light with your data. Equifax, harden it up, but they were breached. That's what I did my capstone project on.
Thanks.
And that affected 3 countries. So that came out 2019. So we might just start to see the effects of that, because they're going to sell that out on the dark web. But protect your information as much as you can when you're online with like Instagram and all that. People, yeah, probably want to be your friend, but they want to be your friend because they're going to ask you questions like, what's your favorite color? Where did you grow up? These is, if you recognize, are questions that when you're setting up online accounts, that are questions you're being asked as that second authority going through. So those are also, you know, everybody loves to have the followers and stuff, but if you don't know them, then they probably don't mean anything well for you. So, but again, Daryl, great job. And I think this was great. And hopefully more of the community will go to the website too, to check things out afterwards.
I appreciate it, Tammy, and you're right. We're moving up. You know, we have our privileged accounts are going to 16 characters, 18 characters, and we're moving these up. And all these things in a world that Tammy referred to are things that are you're moving the bar every single time, and you have to continue to move it because they're going to get better and better. And I think it's extremely valuable. And Tammy, you should do the same thing. You should host one. It sounds like you could go through and do something similar to this. I think the message that we get out to people is more and more important. I think it'll help. And it's, I feel obligated when I see some of the simple things that happen to people to be able to share that information on a level. We could go into so much detail on the ins and outs of some of these, but from a high level that just goes over people's heads. The one thing I wanted to see tonight was eyes looking, not that glossed over look like he's talking about things I'll never have to worry about. That was really, really helpful. I mean, I think that was good. I have to give board presentations all the time, and I'm told bring this down to a level that we can understand this. So for my next board presentation, and I see a few board members that I know on here that will be on there. I worked with Gartner to say, what are the 7 questions that board members should ask of their CIOs regarding security? I'm going to tell you those 7 questions, and then I'm going to answer those 7 questions. And that's the type of approach I think makes more sense to people, not getting into the weeds, the details, or the nomenclature that people just don't understand.
And especially just because we live in the North Country, that mentality, we're just as much as risk as anybody that lives in Los Angeles.
That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We all went without some healthcare people for a week this summer. And that's the true meaning of what is going on in our world. So
Agreed. Any other questions, thoughts, comments that anybody has? Rose, go ahead.
Daryl, I have LastPass, a password manager, and I have the free version, and I scan my MacBook Air periodically, but every so often they say they find something in a file and then I should update or get the premium version. And I'm not running a business. I'm just doing basically, I pay my bills through the bank, and just do the usual internet stuff. I don't have anything really complex. So I wondered if that's something I should do.
Well, I think to the point, what I would suggest is, first of all, if they say they're seeing something, that always makes a concern. And I try not to discount messages. I think that a lot of times you can get fatigued from seeing messages, but I tend to take all of those with a level of realism. And just because you only use it to go online and do a few things, I think that's also one of those biases that says, well, I'm not doing anything serious. It doesn't have to be. If you're accessing accounts online, it could put you in a position, Rose. I use the free version of not LastPass. It's Vault, and I find it to be just fine. I mean, I get messages. They're telling me I should probably upgrade and get the paid version, but I don't really need to. I think it's fine, and I use that on my phone for certain accounts. I still have my other accounts that are locked away. My more sensitive accounts. So one, I would look at those messages that they're giving you to see if something's compromised and pay attention to the detail. And I would change your posture and say, just because I'm doing these things doesn't mean you're any less vulnerable than anybody else. Sorry, I don't know if that's what you wanted to hear.
No,
Darren,
thank you.
Jackie has her hand up.
Sure. Go ahead, Jackie.
Hi, this was very interesting. Thank you very much. It's also mind-boggling. I'm not that proficient with tech stuff, but I'm doing okay. One thing that I'm mentioning is with the phone, I get a lot of these crazy spam calls like everybody else. And I was told to never say yes. They always say, well, is this Jackie or is this, they name my husband's name? And I never say yes and I never say no, because I've heard that sometimes they can use that and they can do some other things with that. And I said yes for this, yes for that. So I never say yes, sometimes I'll say, well, who is this? What do you want? And most of the time I just hang up without answering, because I can kind of tell from the background that it's not somebody I want to talk to. And so it's been so far so good. I haven't had any problems that I know of.
Well, I think those are good practices, Jackie. The one I would suggest doing, and this is just mine, is that I have, I work in a lot of things, but I'll tell you, I still probably have a couple of dozen phone numbers, and I'm perfectly aware of what those are. If it's another number that comes in, I don't touch it. I let it go to voicemail. If there's no voicemail, I obviously you didn't need to talk to me.
Okay, well, I have a house phone and I have a cell phone. My house phone has no, I don't have the blocking. I didn't pay for that. It's just so I can get long distance, and I just use it once in a while. But I have on my cell phone, it tells me if it's sometimes they tell me it's a spam. Sometimes they tell me it's compromised. Sometimes I don't recognize it, so I don't answer it. If I don't know the number, I don't bother answering it.
That's a good practice.
I just let it ring. And that's what I've been doing to try to keep myself safe. And now that I'm alone, my husband's gone, so I really make sure that if they ask for him, I don't even say that he's not here anymore, because I don't know if that might trigger something else either. But I just hang up. I don't say anything.
No, I think that's a great practice, is just ignore them if you can.
Okay. Thank you very much again. Have a good night.
Of course.
Daryl, since you're in the healthcare field, there's one thing that always irritates me. And that is, granted, we don't answer phone calls of the number we don't know. If you're, however, physicians or providers, not physicians, any provider, and I'm using NCH as an example, when they call you for something, if you're waiting for a call or you got a call, it always comes across private. So you never know, you know, I don't necessarily answer private either. Can you ever relay that, or is there a big reason that if you got a call from a medical provider, could they somehow identify themselves on your caller ID?
So this is a complex issue, and probably a little bit more than this, but I'll try to give you the understanding of what happens in a lot of larger organizations. And some of this is starting to change now with the deployment of what they call SIP trunks and some other technologies that we can use for phones. But when you register a business with the phone system for caller ID, you choose one caller ID for that outbound number. So you will see a call coming from Weeks Medical Center or Upper Connecticut Valley Hospital is coming from that. Now, the way they do caller ID, it's based on address. So they'll associate the address of what that number is associated with. What the problems we ran into with a lot of these is the physician offices would call. So you would see now it would eventually update to a physician's number. And we worked with the phone company for many, many years on this to try to understand this. And it goes back to an aging technology that they're currently using for some of these caller IDs. So you would see Dr. Smith come up all of a sudden. And when they updated the caller ID, it could now be Dr. Brown. It could be whatever. So that most of the organizations that we've worked with and I've seen come through will put a standard, you know, Dartmouth Hitchcock. That's it. You're not going to see where it's coming from. And in some cases, you'll put the private number on there if they don't understand what that piece is. I don't know exactly what you're experiencing on those, but that's typically what it is. It's the caller ID that you broadcast out and what that looks like and how that can be compromised. The other thing that can happen, and we've seen a lot of this recently, is that people are sort of compromising those and using fake caller IDs to be able to seem like they're coming from legitimate businesses. This is a problem inherent with caller ID, and I wish there were more restrictions around what they could do with those and legitimize those, but they don't. And so those are the challenges we have. Sometimes the safest thing for us to do is to do private and let it go to voicemail. One thing we are working on doing, and this has to do with a lot of HIPAA compliance and following the High Tech Act, is that we're going to start leveraging the texting capabilities for people, which obviously hasn't been compromised to some level now, so that you'll see legitimate text saying, this is what your appointment is. This is what we do, the appointment reminders, but we might actually engage you to be able to do your appointments online through texting. There's some challenges with that in the platforms that we have to use because of patient privacy, but we're getting there. Sort of went into a rat hole with that on this one. So just giving you an idea of some of the challenges we do have. It's what it amounts to is it's a meshing of legacy and current technologies, and a lot of them haven't caught up with it.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions? Thoughts? Well, I can't thank you all enough for being here. This was a lot of fun for me, at least, to go through and try to bring this together. And I know Nancy said she'll get the slide deck out. You can use it as you will. Hopefully, there's some useful information there. I encourage you to share it. If you've got other people you think that can benefit from it, by all means, share it. There's nothing in there that I think is sensitive and can hopefully only help improve people's posture when it comes to cybersecurity.
Thank you, Daryl.
All
Thanks,
right.
Darren.
Have a great evening.
Thanks,
Nancy, thank
Daryl.
you so much for all this.
Absolutely.
Take
Was
care.
everyone able to get my email out of the chat? Whoops. And if not, you're more than welcome to call the education department at Weeks Medical Center. Our number is 603-788-5685. That's my desk, and we would be more than happy to get the deck out to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good night.